Hello and welcome to another episode of the Contractor Growth Show. This is Mark, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Aaron Lewis from Luria Construction in Bel Air, Texas. Aaron, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
Fantastic. So yeah, we looked at what you guys are up to, but maybe you could tell us, maybe the history of the business and what you guys are up to now.
Yeah, so Luria has been around since about 2013. Um, Construction was always something I felt drawn to since really probably since I was in high school, and I was always mesmerized by it. My first job, well, I worked through high school and everything, but right when I got out of high school, I worked for an electrical contractor, and we were installing underground all the main feeds from the pole into the various schools around Houston, also known as HISD. But construction was more looked at as a as an interest or a hobby, not really something I could lay my head down on. Construction science is kind of a new major they were starting to offer in colleges. This is around 2003, so I'm dating myself here a little bit. And so I went off to college, did the whole college thing. My family was always supportive. My mom was a longtime realtor here in Houston, high top producer, so I'd always see a lot of her clients working with various different investors and so forth, and them doing projects. And I always would see things they would do and be like, that's not right. And I would get in and get involved and try to remedy that. I speak fluent Spanish, so I was always able to communicate. I learned a lot from working with the labor around Houston because it's so bountiful. But I worked in real estate with my mom a little bit when I got out of college, and then I did the corporate thing. I worked in corporate for a long time. I worked from back in the days of Continental Airlines all the way into selling oil and gas software, and then working in marketing roles for some different major communication companies. But construction was always in the back of my mind. I'd see a construction project and be like, man, I wish I was out there. And then doing some side jobs and consulting a little bit, just small consulting, not like big, helping guys trying to get across the finish line with their jobs.
Okay.
So it came to I had done some small jobs here and there, and my brother-in-law had seen that I had a skill, and he's a very successful guy, and he wanted me to help do a project for a friend of his who was looking to move. And we put this crazy deal together where I was able to, it's literally all the stars and planets aligned where he knew the people that owned the house, and they didn't have the capital anyway. I wound up redoing this house, and then his friend wound up not being able to buy it, but it sold for the highest price per square foot in that neighborhood. And I got some notoriety, and so I started kind of snowballing, getting to, we formed the company and started kind of just, sorry, you want to say something?
Well, just an investment company to buy investment properties, this was like a flip house. Is that right?
It was so it's a really interesting question. His friend was looking to buy a house in that neighborhood.
Okay.
But the prices were at that time. Now those prices would be a bargain, right? But
Yeah,
at that time, he couldn't. It didn't make sense. So he was like, "Well, if we could get it for this amount, and Aaron could do the remodels, and I would basically, I did it for basically nothing because I wanted to prove myself because this was going to be my baby. I made something, and but it wasn't what he got. It was a good deal.
Okay, sure.
But so what had happened was, and I'm glad you asked, because that's the whole point of talking on a podcast, is we were looking for this house and we found this house. I was like, man, this house is the best bones of anything I've seen out here. And he goes, wouldn't it be cool if I could tell the homeowners that I would finance the remodel, and then they would get their proceeds at closing, and it would be full price, which was they wouldn't have to negotiate at all. And then this guy would get it at cost, his friend. And I was like, and it benefits everybody.
Okay.
And I was like, that's never going to happen. Who's going to go for that? Right.
Right.
Well, it just so turned out that he knew that he grew up. We looked in the tax rolls and saw that he actually knew the guy who owned the house. It was his family's house that he grew up in, and they had been sitting on it, and they needed the money for his mother's estate, and they were kind of stuck at that, been sitting, and they were like, yeah, sure, we'd love to do this deal, because his guy had also done business deals with my brother-in-law. He's like, yeah, love to work with you. So all the planets aligned perfectly to where it was like, hey, this is my brother-in-law. He's new to construction. He can do this. This is his chance and opportunity. And everybody just took a leap of faith on it. And so it was just a one-off project that we just did to kind of make this deal happen. And then from there, through my mom's real estate, and then just people seeing my name on the job, I started getting calls, and the business just started booming from there.
Wow.
And so it came to a point where I was making the same money doing both, and I had to decide: did I want to not further my growth, or did I want to take it to the next step? And I did that, and it was
Further your growth, learning to run a construction company, or to become a better builder, or to how do you?
yeah. I mean, all those things, but more, definitely all those things, because I've grown so much as a builder since then.
Sure.
But more along the lines of, I had a corporate job, and this was a side gig, and I was doing all these jobs in my off time, so, and a little bit taking calls while I was working my other job. And so I had to make a decision. I couldn't do that forever. So I was either going to have to keep my company at a low level, or just not or stop and just say, hey, I'm going to be a corporate guy my whole life. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I think some days as a business owner, you're like, why could I not be okay working for somebody? but but there's definitely, I just knew that I wanted to own my own company. I didn't know what, and this seemed more like a dream than a reality. And when I saw that there was something tangible, like I said, I was making the same money doing both. So I really enjoyed having that double income. But I knew I was going to have to take a lifestyle cut in order to do this, to be safe. And I knew that, like, I either had to, and I just, the thought of kind of giving up and not going for it wasn't an option.
That is fantastic, dude. I love it.
Yeah.
So just reading here off your site, kind of cool description, based in Bel Air, which is where you guys are in Central Houston. Luria Construction Company's full service, custom build and remodeler. But then it's kind of cool, the story, what you're talking about here, is that you started Luria in 2013 with the purpose of remodeling your own properties to sell.
Right. That was the project we did. We heard.
Yeah. And then due to the overwhelming positive response you got from different folks in the public and whatnot, that property sold quickly. Maybe you went through a few other properties and then decided to start kind of open shop for the public to go out and do these remodeling services, for homeowners.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
I love it. And so, man, I'm curious, I've done a fair amount of real estate work myself and remodeled a lot of houses for, our own kind of flip properties ultimately. And I've also done a lot of, construction work for other people, remodeled conditions, this kind of thing. How has you, having been a principal in that position, remodeling your own properties, how has that had an effect on the way that you think about remodeling other people's properties? And maybe sometimes they're investment property, even that you're dealing with. I don't know that. But you kind of can see through the eyes of that sort of like investor or owner or principal. Does that affect the way that you approach these jobs at all?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So yeah, I feel like when you're always worried about liability. Just, that's the easiest way to say it. You're thinking about ROI. I'd say that there's a lot of times I go on consults with clients, and I'd probably make a ton more money if I just said, yeah, let's do that. But I'll say, that's putting, $80,000 into remodeling your laundry room. I'll do it. but I don't think that's going to give you a huge net return on your home. Especially if you're
Really
only planning,
interesting.
especially if you're only planning to live here 3 to 5 years, like
Right.
a laundry room is a laundry room, right?
Uh-huh.
People really aren't going to look to, because I'm thinking about one project in particular,
Uh-huh.
and this lady wanted this really elaborate, and it was a great, I would have loved to do it, but I just looked at her and I was like, if this was your master bathroom, if this was your kitchen or something like that,
Right.
yeah, let's go for it. I mean,
This
I
is
mean,
not gonna pay back. This is not gonna pay you a return. As long as you know that, we can maybe proceed, but you need to know that up front. And most
right.
builders not gonna tell someone that, right? They're gonna say, "Hell yeah, I want the money."
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, and we're a capitalistic country, and I have no problem with that. But
Yeah, sure.
I look at it like that, and I always want to be able to lay my head down on my pillow at night and know that I gave somebody the best advice possible. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and there's also things, I look at, where I don't want, like I always say, I love my referral base, I love my clients, but I don't want them to call me unless they got more work for me. I don't want them to call me with problems.
Huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so, because that's how you can get in a sticky, you can get yourself in litigation or something like that. And that's what I feel like any investor, anybody who's building. I mean, I've seen some investors who take some shortcuts, and I don't want stuff to come back at me and bite me because they can make you look really bad.
Mhm.
And that's always been a paranoia of mine. So I am very critical to make sure we're doing the best stuff possible so it doesn't come back.
Uh-huh. Interesting. And we had talked, actually, you and Haley had talked, but our
Yeah.
our team, you guys had talked some, before you and I got on the phone here. And I think you had a couple of ideas, some things that I think you are especially have got some, unique skills in. I mean, one thing is I'm curious what your thoughts are around, as a builder remodeler going into a project, but analyzing your numbers and then putting as much sort of analytics behind quotes as
Yeah.
possible. So you're going to go quote a project. How do you approach creating analytics, metrics, things that you can measure, so that that quote is spot on exactly where you want it to be?
Are you talking pre-construction or post-construction analytics?
With pre-construction analytics.
I mean,
I wasn't prepared for that. For there to be multiple more options in that.
yeah. So a little bit about me. I when I graduated from college, I was the first person in my family to graduate college. So that was part of the pressure I had there. And I remember when I got my corporate job, I I they had me doing spreadsheets and all this analytics, and I hate numbers. I hate them.
Mm.
Still do. Um, but I realized that I had dodged a lot of responsibility as far as being more analytical and being able to do analysis. And so I went back and got my MBA, and I got that in 2012.
Hmm.
And I went to my alma mater I went to before and got that. And I got an MBA and I was like, I really need to hold myself, no pun intended, accountable. So I got an MBA in accounting. Uh,
Great. Awesome.
so I am not by no ways an accountant, but I know enough to be annoying and dangerous.
Okay.
And so, and also from analyzing stuff, when you look at your numbers. So, y- you know, I hate to say, I mean, some may disagree, but I feel like anything in construction or anything, you're going to skin your knees a couple times on different jobs.
Mhm.
You might have underestimated something, or you may have forgotten something need to be done,
Right.
and so I look back at previous estimates that I feel are similar, or I try to do an analysis and look at that, look at what my cost was, what was the size of that job relative to what I had. Remodels, people always want to ask you that number. What's your price per square foot on a remodel? And it's like, well, I mean, it depends upon how much square footage you have. They
Uh-huh.
kind of make you feel. I know a lot of people, because I think they're also used to the whole Xactimate thing, or just whatever they hear that you give a
Oh,
price per square foot, a price per linear foot.
sure. Uh-huh.
Um, and you can't necessarily do that because it depends upon, we're more on the luxury side. So it depends
Mm.
upon, what type of finishes they did, what kind of special, considerations we had to take into consideration, the space. If you're doing a larger space, your price per square foot is going to be lower relative to a smaller space where it's going to be higher because you have
Mhm.
more space to spread that cost out.
Mhm.
Um, so I always kind of look at that and kind of compare previous, it's a very simple thing. Kind of look at that. I look at all my line items. Did I miss anything? Did I forget anything? To kind of do that and have my checklist accordingly. And you have your standard stuff that you typically put in there, but we're custom. So every estimate has its unique thing, but kind of looking at similar line items and cross-referencing that is what I do on the pre side of it.
Okay. Huh.
I would say mid and post, it's checking your yield. It's checking to see what you're yielding, what did you totally net on that job, and putting your overhead expenses and so forth like that into the project. And and really doing a full analysis. I'd say one of my things that, one of my business coaches had said, perfection is the problem. Procrastination is the enemy. And that's relative.
Right.
That's relative to, I sometimes wait a little bit too late to do my analysis because I want to make sure, was any cost going to come up? Is anything else going to come in here? But you realize if you have maybe $400 to $500, that shouldn't really affect too much on your yield or whatever on your project, to know kind of how you perform relative to estimate, and then seeing how well that worked out. So that's kind of how I calculate that.
That's great. What software do you use or recommend to run analysis like that?
I do it on Excel.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, forget it.
I'm an Excel nerd.
Guys, you need to learn how to run yield on various aspects of the job in Excel.
Yeah, no, I'm an Excel guy. I like to see my numbers. I like to see my formulas. I am an Excel guy. I probably should develop something,
That's awesome.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, at least, it sounds like a relatively straightforward process. If you can run that in Excel, I'm sure you got some complicated equations and things, but this isn't some crazy fancy software. This can be done basically.
Yeah, you don't have to go put some big capital investment into it. And that's, I particularly like raw data. That's why I wouldn't really, I know there's probably solutions out there, and someone will hear this podcast and probably try to call and sell me something. But I like the raw data because I can get out the abnormality, especially with custom. If I was doing more, production type stuff, then maybe that would be easier. But with custom everything, there's so many variables that go into it.
How many folks do you have on your team these days? They kind of fluctuate some, but
so we run off the lean model. It's me. My mom works as my office manager, and really she's my manager, even though I'm the owner of the company.
Yeah.
But she helps me with kind of the day-to-day, taking calls and helping with scheduling, customer stuff, and really just filing, keeping. It's so much paperwork. There's so many invoices and mail, and always something that comes in. So she helps me keep up with all the office stuff. And then I have a project manager who's my right-hand man, and he really facilitates with me with clients, dealing with subs, because we have a huge network of subs. I probably have maybe anytime between 60 to 100 different subcontractors. I'm talking total employee count, working for me at a time that I'm responsible for. So, he's keeping up with them and keeping eyes on all them as far as what they're up to. And then, kind of relaying stuff back to me. And then I have a construction manager where he kind of goes and puts out my fires. He knows my standard. He's checking stuff. And then, when we have a small little thing like this concrete needs to be patched here or something like that, he goes and puts that out for me and kind of knocks that out. Or if we have like a really small demo, he'll go knock that out. And that's kind of how this past year, we've leaned out our head count because, this is probably the slowest year I've ever had in business. And that seems to be across the board with everybody I've talked to.
Things have slowed down. Yeah.
It's, between economic stuff, between economic stuff in the country, and then election years are just always down. It's been like that every election. It's always like
everybody's
that.
been talking about that.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what. I've learned to become very politically agnostic because
tell me about it.
Well, because when one side of when one party wins, they go spend a bunch of money, and it's vice versa. So it's not it's just not. And I don't know. I've seen too many people lose friendships over that. It's just not worth it. So,
Yeah, sure.
and I have great clients of both political affiliations, and so it just, I don't really care. So that's part of it. I also think that we've, everybody talks about interest rates and how they were high and that they're supposed to start coming down. And I do think that'll help on the new construction part of it. I mean, I'm fortunate that most of my clients, even on, $500,000 construction projects, they're cash pay. And I'm not really dealing with banks on that, which in all the inspections, but
in a luxury market, and that is less the fluctuations of the economy. Yes.
it's always going to be relative to the economy.
It's still feeling that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if the stock, because I mean, for example, if the stock market's surging, people are going to put their money in the stock market. I mean, I mean, with that, I can get a little tangential, so you might have to rein me back in. But my target demographic, I would tell anybody who's working in residential. I mean, because we also do commercial. Like I have a commercial side we do too, where we're doing a lot of restaurants. But I would say if we're talking residential, for example, your target client on residential is women. Like it is women.
Insight.
Because you all, and I always say any construction project where the wife is not calling the shots, you're going to have a bad project because you want her to be happy. That's who you're trying to appeal to. And if the husband cares more about where the cookie sheets go, you got an issue.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
This could get complicated. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
I jokingly say one of my best projects, it was almost a $500,000 remodel. And one of my best jobs I've ever done. And I love this client to this day. And she and I keep in touch all the time. I worked with her most of the time. I met her husband once before we started, and I met him a second time after it finished. And he never gave me any issues. He was great. He was a doctor. He worked long hours. We're in the middle of the project. Nothing out of him. And he says she wanted to put the microwave in the island, and then she goes, "Hey," he called in. My husband called and asked if we could put the microwave higher up. Don't be upset. I was like, and he just doesn't want to bend over. I go, absolutely no problem. We will change the cabinet layout. This guy's giving us no issues. We want him to be happy. So that's a little bit. So you need to know that, on the residential side that you really want to, because and a lot of guys make this mistake. I've heard people tell me that they'll go meet with a client on residential and they'll only look at the husband the entire time during their consult, or,
it's the wrong move, right?
It's just disrespectful. Or they'll do things like they'll say, the wife will ask him to do something, and then he'll look at the husband to see if he's okay with it. And you can't do things like that.
No, that's not who's making the final approval here.
That's not who you're going to be working with. So, that's a really important thing for people to know when they're taking on these jobs. But so, one thing, understanding your target demographic, we're talking about new construction. I would go ahead.
Oh no, it's just back to the topic there. Yeah.
So the other topic was, I think another reason we've seen some, from interest rates, I feel like another reason things were soft is because people depleted a lot of their cash reserves post-COVID when they were buying new homes. So you had people, if you remember the real estate market, I mean, for example, in my area, if someone bought a house for $1.5 million, okay, they were pricing at the top of the market. And then you had people who were buying stuff, didn't even see the house. They're just making an offer of what they see out the internet. And they're making an offer for, they wind up getting a competitive situation. The house goes under contract for $1.8 million. So the person's now going to agree to pay $300,000 more. And then on top of it, then the house doesn't appraise for the price. It only appraises for 1.4. So now that person's going to have to spend more on their down payment and go, $400,000 out of pocket, and they didn't.
Oh, interesting.
So when the wife
liquidated their cash reserves,
right? So when they say, "Well, we wanted to make these remodels to our home," they have to wait a couple years. And I think
save up some cash again. I see.
to save up some cash again. And that's going to be no matter what socioeconomic lifestyle you're at. There's a point where money is still an object. It's not, it's not money's no object just because you're successful. It's just how it is.
Wow. Interesting. Well, do you think, I mean, are you guys at the kind of sweet spot of your own growth right now, or do you think that you'll grow some over the next few years? You planning to grow some percentage?
We're going to grow. I mean, I don't I don't necessarily have a percentage because I mean, this is kind of an unprecedented time, where it's been soft like it's been this year. We generally were doing about 2 million on the low side up to about 3.5. So I would say that my goal is to get to 5. And then, I'd like to be the next 5 years, I'd like to be at a $10 million annual revenue, but that's going to take,
that's great.
But that's going to take us increasing our commercial footprint and doing some more new construction and various things like that.
Interesting. And then what do you think, man, I'm just curious. I mean, as a businessman and as someone that has multiple degrees in business and looks at this from a business angle, what's the long-term vision, man? I mean, is it to sell? Is it to exit? I mean, so you get, 5 years down the road, you guys are at 8 figures, at $10 million. By that point, you will inevitably have had multiple offers of people coming along saying, hey, we want to buy it, from private equity to competitors. What makes sense to you as one possible outcome down the road?
The thing I have in my heart, and it's the timing of this question is a little crazy, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this now. But we just found out my girlfriend was pregnant a few days ago.
Congratulations! Amazing. So
I'm a little bit. I'm in a little.
You heard it here first, guys.
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of shock right now, and I'm very excited. It's a bit surreal because I never thought this would happen.
Incredible.
But it has, and I'm super stoked. But talking about, especially now that, we actually saw before I came here, we saw the ultrasound, first ultrasound today. So it's a really cool thing that I'm going through. Yeah. It's very cool, man.
Surreal, man. How exciting.
Yeah, no, beautiful. Dude, I hear people saying, I'm like, oh yeah. Now I'm like going through, I'm like, damn, like this is a real thing. It's super cool. So I'm going through the emotions on it right now and all great stuff, but definitely now I'd like to have something I could pass down to my kids. I've always thought that. And now that this is that, now if they're going to be, I also have younger twin sisters. One's a surgeon, one's a nurse anesthetist. If my kids will probably be smarter than me, if they want to go be doctors, lawyers, or whatever like that, then that's fine. I want to build something. I like building, so my goal is to build as long as I can, and whatever the end result is, if I have something that somebody wants me to pass down to them, I'd love to be able to do that. If not, we'll see who else is, we'll just see what happens when that time comes.
That is awesome. How inspiring, man.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, Aaron Lewis, Luria Construction, over in Bel Air, Texas, there, Southwest, a little bit of Houston. Beautiful area of Houston. If folks want to get in touch with you, Aaron, or they want to take a look at your website, your work, where's the best place to reach out to you?
So we're actually in the process of a website reboot, and we just need to go ahead and launch it. But go to our website, luriaconstruction.com, LURIA construction.com. We're also on Instagram, Luria Construction. You can check us out there. I do a lot of Q&A stuff that I talk to. I mean, it's fun to do this because I want contractors to know, tips that I've learned along the roads, and so forth. And drop me an email, drop me a phone call. I'm always happy to tell people, whatever they want to learn, or if I can help them at all.
Yeah, that's great. We didn't really talk about it. I know you've got a lot of great video content on Aaron, I feel like we only just scratched the surface here. I think there's a lot of great stuff to talk about. I'm totally curious about your bilingual nature and how you guys have grown the business and all kinds of things. Maybe we'll have a chance one of these days on the road to get you back on the show.
I'd love to, man. Yeah, I definitely will have some things that I'd love to call out too if anybody's wanting to listen.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. Everybody go take a look at Aaron's stuff over at luriaconstruction.com, and we'll talk with you again soon, man.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
Okay.